Unlike some of the images, which are pretty horrifying, there's a story here, but the viewer gets to kind of make up the ending. You know, is she hopeful going back to her hut with the reeds? Is she desolate and barely able to take another step? Is she rebuilding? Are they subsisting? You know, kind of where do you take that? Before I came here to the college, I worked for about 10 years studying different types of political violence, specifically kind of terrorism or insurgency. So the bullets is probably closest to my professional work than the other two categories. But in teaching international politics here at the college and some of the other courses, you begin to categorize different elements of diplomacy. And while the subtitles of Ballet and Ballots and Bullets are by no means exhaustive or exclusive, what we tried to do is really create categories, but dynamic categories, things that where, for example, politics could include election monitoring in Kazakhstan at the same time that they would include political satire in the streets of Europe. This is a Concha Meta, and this shows kind of women going on what probably best described as a pilgrimage and sort of lowercase pilgrimage. This also has a lot to do with sort of cleansing and bathing in different elements of the holy water. The image right in front of you is Israel. She had her camera with her and she just pulled it out and started snapping pictures exactly as anyone would do. And she was able to capture some of the graffiti art that was attempting to make inroads toward peace. When we reached out to try and see who should be included, you know, we wanted some of those that we knew had really lived and breathed all these elements. Sebastian Rich's photos from Iraq, for example, are incredibly depressing but striking. But then recognizing the fact that, hey, our students really have a contribution to make here. And no longer does John Kerry get to control the diplomatic message. I mean, the diplomatic message is conveyed with a simple tweet, an iPhone, whatever that happens to be. So if we want to have an exhibit on what diplomacy means in the 21st century, even though you can't possibly accomplish that with, 4 dozen images, then you're going to have to include some of the non-traditional channels. When Sebastian was walking around this refugee camp on the Jordanian border, he just sort of pulled back some of the sheet metal and said, oh my gosh, it's akin to a pop-up wedding dress shop, because you're gonna have marriages, you're gonna have births, you're gonna have deaths, just like you would anywhere else, because people exist to rent wedding dresses. You're in these conflict zones and you think, why am I taking this person's picture? I should be giving them food or money, or I should be helping them instead. One of his hopes is that, in addition to just kind of communicating what's happening in the world, that these images, as sad as they are, will inspire others to raise money to do something to fix this. What's come out during the process of curating this exhibit is, though I study war and death and destruction, and frankly I spend a lot of time studying how people kill each other, that I choose to be an optimist. So I don't pretend that the people in these images have lived or even lived well, but I think that in each image there's an element of hope or opportunity. So you might be looking at a malnourished child at a feeding center in Afghanistan, but that should then cue the next generation of aid and assistance and workers. One of our favorite pictures, though, is, hey, you need a haircut. You might have just been brutally beaten by police, you're so far from your home, but if you can have this moment of normalcy, then that's gonna help kind of get through the day. And everyone, needs a little haircut.